this is Jill Ciminillo with Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and this week I am test driving a Land Rover Defender 130, which means it has a third row. And we've been talking a lot about third rows on the channel recently with the launch of the Lexus TX and the Toyota Grand Highlander that have placed an emphasis on the third row and third row legroom. So yeah, I figured it made sense to start right here because this is what's new for this model year. So in this video, yeah, we're going to start in the third row, but then I'm going to move on and I'm going to tell you 5 good things and 5 bad things about this vehicle. And I'm going to tell you there are more good things and more bad things than just 5, but I'm limiting myself. So 5 good things, 5 bad things, and this third row. So let's get started right now. All right, so the first thing I'm going to point out is I was able to drop this middle seat here so that I could have, well, a clear view while I was filming video. But in general, this is a pretty roomy back seat in terms of legroom. So if I scooch over here, I probably have about 5 to 6 inches between my knee and the back of this seat, and I think that's pretty well done. A lot of conversation is going on about being able to fit real adults back here. I'm not a real sized adult. I'll be honest, I'm 5 feet tall. I am probably the size of a 10-year-old child. I'm somebody who would actually sit in the third row seat, but for whatever reason, they want to shove grandpa back here. I don't know why you would do that. But at any rate, if you wanted to shove grandpa back here, you could totally do that because grandpa's going to have enough leg room. And, you know, this doesn't pump my knees off. You can see this doesn't pump my knees off the seat too much. So I feel like I have good, you know, just good general seating position sitting here. What else is going on? All right, you've got a little armrest here that's padded. You've got some cup holders. You've got air vents in this D-pillar here. You've got a little LED light right there. You have a moonroof covering the third row, so I appreciate that. And you've got some big windows, so I don't feel like I'm completely claustrophobic and penned in, even though you've got these really big in-your-face headrests in the second row. So good legroom, good, you know, elbow padding. But the one thing that I'm going to point out, well, okay, look, also decent headroom. But the one thing that I want to point out is this is my biggest pet peeve with third rows right now, is this is not really made. Like if you want to put grandpa back here, you're not going to be able to put 3 grandpas back here. You're going to put 1 grandpa back here and maybe 2 very small children. Because look at this. I forget how big we decided my shoulders are. I think they're like 15 or 16 inches wide. But this is me just sitting in this seat. And then I move over and then I'm overlapping the seams here. And, you know, kind of the same with my hips. So you could probably fit 3 of me back here, but you're going to hear a whole bunch of, she's touching me, she's touching me, she's touching me. Nobody wants to hear that for any length of time. So in terms of the width, I would probably really only put 2 people back here. But in case of an emergency, you could fit 3. There are seat belts for 3. And that brings me to the lack of comfort of the seats themselves, because these things are really, really hard. These are General Motors caliber hard third row seats. There is no padding back here. And you've got these big gaping holes where they've got the seat belts to, you know, I mean, just like, okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm like sitting in a hole. So, I don't know. This is a mixed bag of this third row because you've got good leg room, you've got good elbow padding, you've got USB-C ports, you can charge back here, you've got cup holders that are actually going to hold some of your stuff, but seats aren't comfortable. And you know what? There's one more not so great thing about this third row. And before we get into the 5 good things and 5 bad things, I got to show you what that is. All right, it's this right here, and that is how you get back into the third row. We've seen a lot of innovations recently where people want to make it easy to move this middle seat and get back into that third row so that even a child could do it. There is no child that is going to be able to get into this third row alone. I'm just going to tell you that right now, because here's how it works. There's a latch on the back of the seat. You have to pull that, and then you have to put a little bit of heft behind it to move this seat forward. Then, rather than having a large opening here, you have a little bit of a V, and you have to kind of step back up in here, and you can see my hips fill this full opening. So again, if you're going to put grandpa back here, that's just cruel. It's cruel and unusual. And then you can close that up, and to get back out, it's the same thing. And you've got to push it forward. So maybe a kid could get out by themselves, but this is kind of an awkward in and out. So again, I'm going to say this is an occasional third row, and yeah, Lexus and Toyota did this much better. All right, now that we are done with the third row, it is time to get into the 5 good things and 5 bad things. And because I'm a positive sort of person, we're going to start with the good things. And the first thing I want to say is, even as a petite person, I feel like I have a really good commanding driving position. Now, one of the reasons somebody's going to buy a Land Rover Defender is because it sits really tall. And you have a good view of the road. Well, even as somebody on the shorter side of things, I still have a really good view of the road. And I like the fact that the hood is very squared off. So I feel like I have just really good sense of where the vehicle starts and where the vehicle ends, especially out the front. I love the big windows out the front and the side, and I just feel like I have a commanding view of the road and a really good driving position. So that is going to kick off the good things, and I'm going to go from that straight into the power. This has a 3.0 liter V6 engine, delivers 296 horsepower, 274 pound-feet of torque. And even though this is a very big and heavy vehicle, that is enough power. It is a lot of power. It's actually more than enough power, and this feels really good. So merging onto the highway, kind of maneuvering on city streets, this does a really, really good job. I thought this was just the right amount of power. Again, plenty of power, more power than you need in this vehicle. And while it doesn't make your heart go flip-flop, it does, again, just give you a little bit of a lift when you are power accelerating onto the highway. So that also ranks the good list. They did a really good job with this powertrain. Flipping the camera around, I am going to say that I really appreciate the fact that they have wireless Apple CarPlay, and they have the USB-C and USB-A charge ports. So they've got dual charge ports here for you to be able to charge your device with whatever cord that you have access to. I appreciate that in this transitory time where people are kind of going between both. But wireless Apple CarPlay works really well. I like that it takes up the full screen. And I also really like the fact that the infotainment system has these little gauges over here, these little buttons, icons over here, menu items that can get you out of Apple CarPlay and into your car's navigation menu pretty easy and pretty seamlessly. And then if you're in the regular car's native menu, you can get back to Apple CarPlay easily by pressing this button here. So initial setup of this is pretty good. And I like, again, the wireless Apple CarPlay. So staying in this general area, I will say the 4th good thing on my list is going to be the dual automatic climate controls. Okay, yeah, it is summer right now, but I'm going to point out it is a dreary, dismal summer day that's kind of cold outside. And yep, I'm going to use the heat and the heated seats, and you can tell where my husband was sitting. That would be right there. So dual automatic climate controls always gets a huge win for me. And I like the fact that these are pretty big dials to access. And I like the duality of the controls where you can, press it to get your heated seats. I will be honest, this did take a little bit of getting used to be able to see what the duality was. And then the other part of the duality, I guess, triality, I don't know, is the fact that you can control your climate controls by hitting that button, and then you can control your drive modes by hitting that button there. So that allows you to change your drive modes, and you don't have to get out of or use a different button. So I like the fact that they streamlined this. They made it really simple and really easy to use in order to be able to access the different controls and gauges on here without putting too many buttons and dials. Along those lines, the final thing on the good list is just going to be the general design of this vehicle. It is meant to be rough and rugged, and it looks like it should, fit the bill. You've got a really nice material here that is going to be easy to clean. And, the same goes for this. It's not leather. And I really like the upright design that you have of this center stack. I like the gear shift on here. I love the horizontal nature of the interior features. I like the little cubbies to put spaces, and they've even gone so far as to put another USB-C charge port here, so your passenger can put their phone in this and then charge it at the same time. So I don't know, and then this, even though it looks like a design element, it's functional because it's a little bit of an oh shit handle. So if you are doing some off-road driving or driving on potholes in Chicago, you've got something for your passenger to grip onto, and I definitely appreciate that. So I like the functional, rugged, utilitarian design on the inside as well as on the outside. I think that Land Rover has done a great job giving this a unique shape, and it doesn't really look like anything else on the road. Well, okay, maybe except for the new Lexus GX that was just launched. But I love the design of this vehicle. I think it looks great. It's very upright, and I don't know, it just makes me feel like I want to go on a safari. So I think that Land Rover has done a great job with the design on the interior and the exterior. All right, since we are on the outside, I am just going to launch right into my do not like list right here. And the further away that you stand, the less you can see it. So we're going to get a little bit closer. While I like the overall design of this vehicle, some of the fit and finishings just don't line up for me, and it looks a little bit awkward. I mean, this is supposed to be like this, you can see, but it just looks a little bit awkward in how it was put together. And you can see it especially as you move to the side of the vehicle where you have this cladding here around the window, and then it doesn't line up here, and then it ends over here. And you have pieces here that don't really line up, and I'll be honest, this isn't as bad as it could have been, but for a vehicle that cost $74,000, I just really want it to look a little bit better and be lined up a little bit more than what it is. So that's going to be the first thing on my do not like list. As long as you don't look too closely, it's fine. It's totally fine. Now, climbing back into the vehicle, I'm going to point out getting in is going to be a little bit of a challenge because there is a grab handle right here, but that's not in a terribly intuitive or logical or easy to use location. Really, I want something right here that I'm going to be able to use to kind of pull myself into the vehicle. Instead, I do this awkward, hip hike and kind of pull myself in using the steering wheel. And I don't know, maybe that's the way you're supposed to do it, but it just seems a little bit hard and weird and awkward in order to get into a vehicle that has a commanding view of the road, which again, we like the commanding view of the road. It's just not easy to get into it. Now for the third thing on my bad list or do not like list, we're going to come over here and we are going to talk about cruise control, because this has cruise control, but it does not have adaptive cruise control. And I guess it's one of those features that either you love or you don't love. And I don't use it in normal everyday driving, but when I'm on a road trip or I'm in a trafficked highway condition situation, which is going to be in Chicago for the next 100 years because of construction, I really like adaptive cruise control because it takes the fatigue out of the driving situation. You have lane keep assist, and you have a speed limiter, so you don't go over the speed limit, but there is no adaptive cruise control. And again, for a vehicle that costs $74,000, I just feel like that is a bit of a miss. So the fourth thing on the list is, my new pet peeve in vehicles, and that is going to be your wireless charging. I really feel like automakers shouldn't put wireless charging in a vehicle unless they've nailed it, and Land Rover did not. In addition to the fact that this is a wide open space here, so there's nothing that is going to grab your phone or hold it into place, although I will say this is a nice material and your phone doesn't slide around too much. This heats up your phone. Now, the longest drive that I did in this vehicle was just an hour, but when I pulled out my phone from this charging position, I was like, ow, hot potato, hot potato. My phone was really hot. So I can imagine over a 2 or 3 hour drive, your phone is going to overheat and it's going to disconnect your Apple CarPlay, and all sorts of other bad things are going to happen because your phone's going to shut down. So I really want to see automakers put a cool pad here, and and I had to move my phone around a little bit in order to hit the right spot for it to begin charging. So the only automaker that I have seen that really nails wireless charging right now, and as much as I give General Motors a hard time for their seat comfort, they've nailed the wireless charging. So they've pulled your phone in just right. They've got a cool pad. Everything works really well. Land Rover did not nail this. So the final thing on the do not like list, is going to go back to this infotainment system. So even though I really like this wireless environment and I think they've done a good job with these menu items, the infotainment system itself is just slightly unintuitive. So whenever I have my husband in the car, what I do is I always ask him to, because I'm a quiet driver. I don't need music. I don't need to listen to anything. But he wants music. And so he's like, well, how do I turn the music on? And I'm like, you should figure that out. And so he comes in here and he's kind of scrolling through these different menus. And he's like, well, this isn't obvious to me. And I don't think I want to he didn't think he wanted to hit this media option right here because he thought that would turn on the music on my phone. And yeah, my husband does not like the music on my phone. I have the musical taste of a 13-year-old boy. But he wanted, I don't know, some classic rock 80s something. But he couldn't figure that out. And I was like, oh, he's like, well, it's not the media. And I was like, actually start with the media. So, then you go into the media and you can go into your player, your favorites. You've got to go into your sources, whatever. But even here, I'm like, all right, so player favorites related search. How do I get back if I wanted FM radio or if I wanted my Apple CarPlay music? How do I get back to that? So this is just not a very intuitive system. And the other thing that he said, and I'm in and out of vehicles all the time, and I'm like, okay, I try to take all of this with a grain of salt because an owner is going to get used to this. But he said he didn't find the stuff for the car wasn't as upfront as what he wanted it to be. Now, I will point out that as you scroll through this is somehow editable, but when I was playing around with this, I didn't see how you could edit these cards. So, I didn't RTFM, I apologize. But so this is somehow editable. I don't know how. It's, again, not intuitive. This should be intuitive. I shouldn't have to read the manual to be able to figure this out. I clicked on the pencil. That was obvious. Now, what am I supposed to do with this? This doesn't let me do anything. So, at any rate, that is the final thing on my do not like list. I just wanted this to be a little bit more intuitive than it was. And again, a grain of salt, an owner is going to get used to how this works, but initially it just isn't as intuitive or easy to use as what I want. But I will say, I do like their graphics. They did a good job with that. All right, before I wrap up this review, I just want to give some brief driving impressions. And what I want to say is this is generally a pretty comfortable vehicle, even when you're driving in city spaces. The commanding view of the road just really helps you when you get into tight corners, which, by the way, you do a lot in the city. I like the ride height. I like the overall comfort of the vehicle. And I will say it handles potholes and speed bumps really, really well. Did not fit in my garage, but it parallel parked on my street pretty good because the camera's also pretty good. If I had to sum this up in one sentence, I'm not good at that, but I'll try. I would say this is a really comfortable, competent cruiser that occasionally will fit somebody in the third row. However, there are some quirks that you're going to have to get used to. So I generally have warm, fuzzy feelings about the Land Rover Defender 130, especially because it's just so flippin' cool. But the question is going to be whether some of the quirks that this vehicle has are things that you can live with, and I can't answer that for you. So that's all I've got on the Land Rover Defender 130. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check us out on the web at pickuptrucktalk.com, and I will see you down the road.